they don't have any faith in Gavin Newsom.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of funny because he wants to be president so bad.
That's true what it looks
So
like.
you can't ruin a city and then go on to ruin a state and say, guys, that was just practice.
I know.
Once I get it as a president, I'm going to fix it too.
Well, you can't, it's not his words when he speaks.
Yeah.
You have to watch him closely. And some genius decided not to film him any lower than the shoulder.
Yes, did you? Yes.
So what did he do?
You could see
The moment this conversation started circulating, fans didn't know whether to laugh, gasp, or lean closer to the screen. Because suddenly, a name that usually glides through headlines with polished smiles and carefully framed sound bites was being dragged into a very different kind of spotlight. According to reports in online chatter, Joe Rogan finally said what many people believe the media refuses to say about Gavin Newsom, and the internet hasn't stopped buzzing since. Now,
It's unemployment.
Yeah.
You have the highest homelessness.
Look what they did with Hollywood.
Money's missing. You killed Hollywood. Like, Hollywood doesn't exist anymore. It's literally gone.
That was
you
such an easy one.
mandated vaccines for kids that didn't need them. You guys,
What I saw,
Yeah.
what it looked to me like he was negotiating.
to be clear, this is commentary. We're not saying anything actually happened behind closed doors. What we're saying is that people are talking, clips are circulating, and reactions are pouring in faster than anyone expected. It started like any other casual discussion. No alarms, no breaking news banner, just conversation. But then the tone shifted. Fans claimed the jokes suddenly felt sharper, the pauses heavier, and the energy in the room noticeably different. Social media users say it felt like one of those moments where everyone realizes at the exact same time that something uncomfortable has just
I
been.
mean, it's so crazy, but he's such a great politician. I mean,
No, he's
so
not.
smooth.
He's
You
not,
don't think
though.
so?
No, I think it's terrible.
How's
It's
he
just-
remained in
'cause
power
he
for
has
so long?
Low competition. There's no one who's
there's
good
that.
is competing against him.
I
There's
guess
no
that-
sincerity.
I should say he's not a good. I should say he's smooth. He can
I mean,
trust
he's
his-
a good bullshit artist.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But it's like what the things that he says when he gets confronted with we're the highest this and the highest that. Like,
Been said out loud, and once that line was crossed, there was no walking it back. Emotions ran high, and listeners swear they could hear the tension even through their headphones. What really sent people spiraling wasn't just the words themselves, but what they implied. Viewers began replaying clips, analyzing expressions, and dissecting every sentence as if it were evidence in a trial. Some fans insist this was the first
Look at the blinking. Blink, look. Meet me at the house. Like, he's blinking. He's sending. I'm getting there. Hey, just so you know, I'm not wearing pants. And then, look, he's blinking. And then eventually, the camera guy realizing that he's signaling him, so he gets appalled, leans back, camera comes down, and then we're back to this. I'll do this for you. You do this for me a little. So he's saying whatever he's going to say. There it is. See? They couldn't hold it back. He's like, I'm not on film. Oh, I'm not. Nope. Bring my hands up. Bring them up. Bring them up.
time a major voice dared to question the carefully maintained image so openly. Others argue it was just comedy taken too seriously. Either way, the reaction has been explosive. Comment sections are on fire, clips are being reposted with dramatic captions, and suddenly, a conversation that may have seemed harmless is being framed. Supporters rushed in to defend, critics piled on with renewed confidence. Friends, commentators, and online
told the Los Angeles Times Panera would not be exempt from the law. The spokesperson also denied a claim, the Bloomberg piece, which cited sources close to the matter, that Newsom pushed for an exemption that applies to businesses that bake bread and sell it as a standalone item, calling the report absurd. So is it a fake story?
Or is it something that they
might have corrected
hustled on
course
and corrected
quickly?
course quickly? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the roll up to the top? So where's the initial report?
personalities all weighed in, each adding fuel to the fire. And in the middle of it all sits a growing question that refuses to go away. If people are this shaken by what was said, what does that say about the image they believed in before? Fans are shocked, emotions are divided, and the internet is once again proving that perception can be just as powerful as truth. And this story is only getting started. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It crept in slowly, almost politely, the way rumors usually do when people aren't sure if they're allowed to say what they're thinking. Clips began floating around with captions that hinted at something bigger than a joke, something heavier than casual commentary. Fans leaned in, replaying moments, telling each other to listen closely, not to the punchlines, but to the pauses. Emotions ran high because it felt like one of those rare situations where the tone mattered more than the words. People online weren't claiming facts, they were reacting to a feeling, and that feeling was discomfort mixed with curiosity. What made the chatter grow louder was how familiar the setup looked. A relaxed conversation, laughter, storytelling. And then, according to those
Watch the tape. Yes! He literally goes, I want some of this, then you do some of this, and I'll do some of that back to you, and then we'll do this, and then I'll pay you, and then we'll do it again.
True.
And then she kept saying, no. Okay, how about this? You do this one first, then we do this one, then we give a little back and forth.
Watching a shift. Viewers claimed Joe Rogan's tone hardened just enough to make people uncomfortable. Not angry, not aggressive, but deliberate. Fans started saying it sounded like someone circling a subject they'd avoided for years. Gavin Newsom's name came up, and suddenly the comment sections filled with messages like, "Why does this feel different?" and "Did you catch that pause right there?" Nothing was stated as a fact, but implication is powerful, and the internet thrives on implication. Supporters of Newsom were quick to push back. They said it was being blown out of proportion, that people were projecting their own frustrations onto a conversation that was never meant to be taken seriously. But critics weren't letting it go. They argued that this wasn't about one sentence or one joke. It was about pattern and perception. Fans are shocked, not because of a single remark, but because so many people recognized the same tension at the same time. It felt collective, like an unspoken agreement that something unsaid had finally been acknowledged. As reactions poured in, the story began to take on a life of its own. Commentary channels framed it as a turning point, not because anything was exposed, but because people started questioning why it felt so risky to even talk this way. Emotions ran high across platforms. Some fans praised Rogan for saying what they believe others won't. Others accused him of feeding into drama for clicks. And then there were those who focused on Newsom himself, dissecting his public image, his calm demeanor, and the way he always seems untouched by chaos. What really fueled the drama was how personal it started to feel for viewers. People weren't just arguing about politics
anymore. They were arguing about trust, about whether charisma can distract from outcomes, about whether smooth delivery can soften hard realities. Fans began sharing their own stories, their own frustrations, tying them emotionally to the commentary. It wasn't evidence, it was resonance, and resonance spreads faster than facts ever could. Interview 235 to 303. Online personalities jumped in, adding layers to the narrative. Some claimed the media had protected Newsom for years. Others said that was a tired talking point being recycled. But even those defending him acknowledged one thing: the conversation struck a nerve. Families were divided in group chats. Friends argued in comment threads. Memes popped up within hours, exaggerating gestures and expressions, turning subtle moments into viral symbols. The family was left divided in more ways than one, not because of a revelation, but because of interpretation. Behind the humor and exaggeration, there was a growing sense of unease. People kept asking why this conversation felt heavier than previous ones. Some fans suggested it was timing. Others said it was fatigue. A few argued it was because the stakes feel higher now, and every public figure is viewed through a harsher lens. Whatever the reason, the emotional conflict was undeniable. Viewers weren't reacting to information, they were reacting to implication and tone is harder to defend against. The reactions of others only intensified the drama. Commentators who usually stay neutral suddenly picked sides. Some brushed it off as nothing. Others leaned into the speculation, careful to frame it as commentary, not accusation. Phrases like "people are starting to ask" and "questions are being raised" became common. No one claimed certainty, but uncertainty itself became the headline. Fans are shocked that so little could cause such a strong reaction, and that shock kept the story alive. Interview 327 to 303. For Newsom supporters, the situation felt unfair. They argued that perception was being twisted, that a casual conversation was being elevated into something it never was. They reminded everyone that commentary is not evidence, but critics countered that perception shapes reality, especially in the public eye. Emotions ran high as both sides accused the other of missing the point. It wasn't about truth or lies, they said. It was about why certain topics feel forbidden until someone jokes about them. As the days passed, the narrative deepened. Clips were slowed down, analyzed frame by frame. People debated body language, facial expressions, even silence. It became less about what was said and more about what people believe was meant. Unexpected twists emerged as old interviews resurfaced, stitched together with dramatic music and captions suggesting a larger pattern. Again, nothing was proven, but proof wasn't the goal. Engagement was. The personal stakes grew higher as fans began tying their identities to their interpretations. Supporting or criticizing Newsom became symbolic of larger beliefs. Friendships were tested in comment sections. Influencers lost followers and gained new ones overnight. The story kept evolving, not because new information appeared, but because reactions kept multiplying. And every reaction added another layer of drama, another reason for viewers to stay invested. By the time the dust seemed ready to settle, it was clear this was no longer just about one conversation. It was about how easily perception can tilt, how quickly commentary can turn into controversy, and how a single moment can ignite unresolved tensions that have been simmering for years. The conversation hadn't exposed facts, but it had exposed feelings, and those feelings refused to be ignored, pushing the narrative forward as if it had a momentum of its own, rolling seamlessly into the next wave of reactions without ever truly stopping. The fallout didn't hit like a breaking news alert. It seeped into the conversation quietly, the way moments do when people don't immediately realize they're witnessing something that will spiral. At first, it was framed as commentary, just voices talking, jokes flying, opinions bouncing back and forth. Nothing official, nothing confirmed. But fans watching closely swear they felt a shift in the air, a pause that lingered too long, a tone that sounded less playful and more pointed. Emotions ran high not because of what was said, but because what people believed was being hinted at. Online, clips began circulating almost instantly. Not full conversations, just fragments. A sentence here, a reaction there. Captions didn't say, "This is true." Instead, they asked questions. What did he really mean? Why did that land so hard? Fans are shocked by how fast speculation spread, because no one was claiming facts. They were reacting to vibes, to implication, to the feeling that something uncomfortable had brushed the surface. And once that feeling took hold, it refused to
let go. What really pulled people in was how familiar the scene felt. Viewers had seen conversations like this before, casual setups that stayed casual. But this time, according to many reactions, the mood shifted in a way that couldn't be ignored. When Gavin Newsom's name came up, listeners claimed the energy changed. Jokes felt sharper, laughter felt tighter. People replayed the moment over and over, convinced that something subtle but significant had happened right there in plain sight. Supporters rushed in almost immediately, saying it was being exaggerated for clicks. They argued that commentary is just commentary and nothing more. Critics pushed back just as fast, saying this wasn't about one line or one joke. It was about why the reaction was so strong. Fans are shocked because so many people felt the same discomfort at the same time. That kind of collective reaction doesn't usually happen by accident. As the discussion spread, emotions ran high across platforms. Some viewers praised the conversation for feeling honest. Others accused it of being irresponsible. Reaction videos popped up within hours, each one carefully framing itself as opinion, not accusation. Phrases like, "people are starting to notice," and "questions are being raised" became common. No one claimed certainty, but uncertainty itself became the hook that kept audiences watching. The personal stakes for viewers grew quickly. People weren't just debating a public figure anymore, they were debating trust. Trust in media, trust in image, trust in the difference between how things look and how they feel. Fans began sharing stories of their own frustrations, connecting emotionally to the commentary even if the connection wasn't logical. It wasn't about proof, it was about recognition. Reactions from others only added fuel to the fire. Commentators who usually avoided taking sides suddenly leaned in. Some brushed it off as internet noise. Others suggested it revealed a deeper fatigue people feel with polished narratives. Families were left divided in comment sections and group chats, with some defending the image and others questioning it. The family was left divided not because of facts, but because of interpretation. What made this moment linger was the way it refused to resolve cleanly. There was no statement to correct, no clip to retract, nothing concrete to point to. Instead, there was just conversation and reaction feeding off each other. Fans are shocked by how something so intangible could feel so heavy. Memes exaggerated gestures, slow motion edits focused on facial expressions. Silence itself became evidence in the eyes of some viewers. As more people weighed in, the narrative took on layers. Some framed it as a sign of changing tides. Others said it was just another example of the internet overreacting. But even those dismissing it admitted the reaction was unusually intense. Emotions ran high because the stakes felt symbolic. It wasn't just about one person. It was about whether smooth presentation can outlast growing skepticism. The story continued to evolve without ever officially changing. No new information appeared, yet engagement kept climbing. Each reaction created another reaction. Each interpretation sparked another debate. Friends argued. Influencers gained and lost followers. The conversation became a mirror, reflecting whatever viewers already believed, while convincing them they'd just seen something new. By the time the initial shock began to fade, one thing was clear. This wasn't about confirming anything. It was about how easily perception can tip, how quickly commentary can become controversy, and how a single moment, framed the right way, can ignite emotions that were already waiting beneath the surface, pushing the story forward with a momentum that felt impossible to stop. As the reactions kept building, the conversation shifted from curiosity to something heavier. People weren't just asking what was meant anymore. They were asking why this moment felt different from all the others that had come before it. Fans began comparing it to past discussions, replaying older clips, trying to understand why this one struck such a nerve. Emotions ran high because the comparison made the contrast clearer. Those earlier moments felt contained. This one felt like it cracked something open. Commentator channels leaned into that feeling, carefully choosing their words. They reminded audiences that this was still just commentary, still just reactions to reactions. No one claimed secret meetings or hidden recordings. Instead, they talked about patterns, about tone, about how often image and delivery seem to matter more than outcomes. Fans are shocked by how quickly the discussion turned personal, not for the people involved, but for the viewers themselves. Some supporters argued that the outrage said more about the audience than the conversation. They claimed people were projecting frustration on a public figure who has always
been polarizing. Critics countered that projection doesn't happen in a vacuum, it builds over time, and when it finally surfaces, it looks exactly like this: loud, emotional, impossible to ignore. The family was left divided online, with threads splitting into two camps that talked past each other rather than to each other. What intensified the drama was how easily humor blended with accusation. Jokes were dissected like statements. Sarcasm was treated like confession. Fans replayed laughter, asking whether it sounded nervous or dismissive. Every detail became a clue, even though no one agreed on what it pointed to. Emotions ran high because uncertainty invites imagination, and imagination thrives on conflict. Unexpected twists began appearing as people stitched together unrelated moments. An old interview here, a passing comment there. None of it proved anything, but together they created a narrative that felt convincing to those already inclined to believe it. Others called it irresponsible storytelling. They warned that speculation dressed up as analysis can spiral quickly. But warnings rarely slow momentum once fans are emotionally invested. The reactions of others continued to amplify the story. Influencers weighed in with exaggerated thumbnails and dramatic music. Some mocked the entire situation, treating it as proof that the internet will turn anything into controversy. Others took a more serious tone, suggesting this was a symptom of a deeper disconnect between public image and public experience. Fans are shocked not just by the commentary, but by how quickly people chose sides. Behind the scenes, viewers began tying their own experiences to the discussion. Stories about rising costs, frustration, and feeling unheard flooded comment sections. None of it was directly connected to the conversation that started it all, but emotionally it felt related. That's how the narrative grew, not through evidence, but through empathy. Emotions ran high because people felt seen by criticism that wasn't even aimed at them. Critics framed the moment as overdue. They argued that public figures thrive on silence and controlled narratives, and that even indirect questioning feels threatening when it breaks that control. Supporters pushed back, saying this kind of framing turns opinion into suspicion. The family was left divided again, this time between those who felt relieved to see skepticism and those who felt exhausted by constant doubt. What made the situation even more dramatic was the lack of closure. There was no clear statement to respond to, no claim to debunk. Everything existed in the gray area of interpretation. Fans are shocked by how powerful that gray area can be. It allowed everyone to see what they wanted to see, reinforcing existing beliefs while pretending something new had been revealed. As days passed, the tone shifted from shock to analysis. People began asking broader questions. Why do polished narratives inspire both trust and resentment? Why does questioning tone feel more dangerous than questioning facts? Emotions ran high as these questions spread beyond the original conversation, turning into debates about media, influence, and authenticity. Some commentators suggested this was less about one individual and more about a cultural moment. Audiences are tired, they said. Tired of filters, tired of spin, tired of being told everything is fine while feeling the opposite. Others dismissed that as dramatic overreach, but even dismissal kept the conversation alive, because disagreement is the fuel that keeps these stories moving. The twists kept coming, not from new information, but from shifting interpretation. One day the conversation was framed as comedy. The next day it was framed as courage. Then it was framed as irresponsibility. Each frame attracted a different audience. Each audience added its own emotional weight. Fans are shocked by how quickly the meaning of the same clip could change depending on who was explaining it. By the time attention seemed ready to move on, the narrative had already embedded itself deeper. It wasn't about resolving anything anymore. It was about what the reaction revealed, about how fragile public trust can be, and how easily it can be rattled without a single accusation ever being made. The momentum carried forward naturally, sliding into the next phase of debate without any clear line marking where one conversation ended and another began. The conversation didn't slow down. Instead, it mutated. What started as people reacting to tone and implication slowly transformed into a broader debate about power, influence, and why certain figures seem untouchable no matter how intense the criticism becomes. Fans are shocked by how quickly the focus drifted from the original exchange into something much larger. It was no longer about one discussion or one set of remarks. It was about the feeling that some narratives are protected, while others are endlessly challenged.
Emotions ran high as viewers began questioning why skepticism itself feels controversial. Some argued that asking questions has been rebranded as hostility, while others said constant doubt erodes trust in everything. That clash played out in real time across comment sections. Friends unfollowed each other. Creators lost sponsors. Supporters accused critics of bad faith, while critics accused supporters of blind loyalty. The family was left divided again, not just by opinion, but by how people define fairness. As the noise grew louder, more voices entered the conversation. Comedians treated it like satire. Analysts treated it like a case study. Reaction channels treated it like breaking news, while carefully reminding viewers that this was all commentary. Fans are shocked by how that disclaimer didn't cool anything down. If anything, it added intrigue. The absence of a concrete claim created space for imagination, and imagination thrives when certainty is missing. What really escalated the drama was the way people began assigning motives. Some claimed the conversation was calculated, designed to stir controversy without crossing lines. Others argued it was spontaneous, a rare moment where polish slipped and honesty peeked through. Emotions ran high because motive changes everything. If it was intentional, it felt manipulative. If it was accidental, it felt revealing. Neither side could prove their case, but both argued as if they could. Unexpected twists kept the story alive. Screenshots of unrelated headlines were paired with clips, suggesting connections that were never stated. Timelines were rearranged to imply buildup. None of it confirmed anything, but confirmation wasn't the goal. The goal was coherence. People want stories to make sense, and when reality feels fragmented, they build narratives to fill the gaps. Fans are shocked by how persuasive those narratives can be when repeated often enough. Reactions from others added emotional layers. Some public figures expressed exhaustion, saying they were tired of every conversation turning into a referendum. Others said that exhaustion itself is a privilege, that people with real grievances don't get to opt out of scrutiny. The family was left divided between those who wanted the conversation to end and those who felt it had just begun. As the debate widened, personal stakes became clear. Viewers weren't just defending or criticizing a public figure anymore. They were defending their own worldview. For some, smooth delivery equals competence. For others, it signals evasion. Emotions ran high because challenging one interpretation felt like challenging the person holding it. Disagreements felt personal even when they weren't meant to be. The media response added another twist. Some outlets ignored the chatter completely, which critics saw as confirmation of bias. Others addressed it cautiously, framing it as an internet overreaction. Fans are shocked by how either response fueled suspicion. Silence was seen as protection. Coverage was seen as damage control. There was no neutral move left, at least not in the eyes of those already invested. Commentary creators adapted quickly. Thumbnails grew more dramatic. Language became more charged. Phrases like "people are starting to connect the dots" appeared everywhere, even when no dots were clearly defined. Emotions ran high as viewers accused creators of exploiting outrage, while still clicking to watch. Outrage and engagement friend each other, creating a cycle that felt impossible to break. The narrative took a psychological turn as people began discussing charisma itself. Why do confident speakers inspire both loyalty and distrust? Why does calm delivery sometimes feel reassuring and sometimes feel dismissive? Fans are shocked by how deeply these questions resonated. The conversation stopped being about a single figure and started reflecting broader anxieties about leadership and authenticity. Family dynamics even entered the discourse metaphorically. Commentators talked about political loyalty like family loyalty, unconditional and emotional. Others argued that healthy relationships require skepticism. The family was left divided along those lines, with some insisting criticism is betrayal and others insisting silence is complicity. Neither side was willing to concede ground. As days turned into weeks, the intensity didn't vanish. It normalized. The conversation became part of the background noise, referenced casually, assumed knowledge for anyone tuning in late. Fans are shocked by how quickly controversy becomes context. Something that once felt explosive now felt like an ongoing chapter in a much longer story. What lingered most was the unresolved nature of it all. There was no conclusion to reach, no claim to verify or dismiss. Instead, there was a lingering discomfort, a sense that the conversation had revealed how fragile consensus can be. Emotions ran high because people realized how easily trust can be
shaken without a single fact changing. By this point, the narrative no longer needed the original exchange to survive. It had grown independent, sustained by reactions, interpretations, and emotional investment. Each new comment breathed life into it, pushing it forward without resistance. The story flowed naturally into the next phase, carrying with it the same questions, the same divisions, and the same uneasy feeling that something important was being argued without anyone agreeing on what it actually was. By the time the conversation reached this stage, it had fully detached from its origin. People no longer needed to reference the original exchange to feel invested. The idea had taken on its own momentum, fueled by emotion, repetition, and the need to assign meaning to uncertainty. Fans are shocked by how something rooted in tone and perception managed to evolve into a full-blown cultural debate. What began as commentary now felt like a mirror held up to the audience itself. Emotions ran high as people started to notice how quickly lines were being drawn. Neutrality became suspicious. Silence became a statement. Even asking for calm was interpreted as taking a side. The family was left divided yet again, this time between those who wanted definitive answers and those who accepted that ambiguity was the point. Some viewers demanded closure, while others argued that the lack of closure was exactly why the moment mattered. As more time passed, the narrative softened in some places and hardened in others. Humor returned, but it carried an edge. Jokes now came layered with implication. Memes weren't just funny anymore, they were symbolic. Fans are shocked by how humor became a coping mechanism for discomfort, a way to talk about unease without admitting it outright. Laughter masked tension, but it didn't erase it. The reactions of others continued to ripple outward. People who had never commented on similar topics before suddenly felt compelled to speak. Some framed their responses as personal reflection rather than opinion, saying the conversation made them question how often they trust presentation over substance. Others dismissed the entire saga as performative outrage. Emotions ran high because even dismissal felt like an attack to those who felt validated by the discussion. Unexpected resolutions appeared, though none of them truly resolved anything. Some viewers decided the moment proved their long-held beliefs. Others decided it proved nothing at all. Both sides felt confirmed. Fans are shocked by how the same event can strengthen completely opposite conclusions. It highlighted how perception filters reality, shaping meaning before fact even enter the picture. The story also revealed how invested audiences have become in narrative arcs. People spoke about the situation as if it were a season of a show, complete with rising tension, character development, and unresolved cliffhangers. The family was left divided between those craving the next episode and those exhausted by the drama. But even exhaustion didn't fully disengage people. They kept watching, kept commenting, kept reacting. Emotions ran high as commentators began reflecting on the broader implications. They talked about how easily public trust can fracture, how charisma can be interpreted as confidence or manipulation depending on the viewer. Fans are shocked by how deeply these reflections resonated, suggesting that the conversation tapped into anxieties that had been building long before this moment. Some tried to reframe the entire situation as a lesson in media literacy. They urged viewers to separate feeling from fact, tone from truth. Others pushed back, arguing that feelings matter, especially when they're shared by so many people at once. The family was left divided on whether emotional reactions are evidence of insight or simply proof of bias. Neither side convinced the other. As attention slowly drifted to new topics, references to this moment remained. It became shorthand, a phrase people dropped into unrelated debates to signal skepticism or frustration. Fans are shocked by how quickly moments like this become cultural reference points, losing specificity while gaining symbolic power. The original context faded, but the emotional imprint stayed. The final twist wasn't a revelation or a statement. It was the realization that nothing needed to be clarified for the impact to last. The conversation had already done its work. It exposed how fragile consensus is, how quickly trust can erode, and how eager people are to fill silence with story. Emotions ran high not because answers were missing, but because certainty felt impossible. By the end, the narrative settled into something quieter but more enduring. It wasn't about proving anything right or wrong. It was about recognizing how commentary alone can reshape perception. Fans are shocked by how little it takes to shift the tone of a conversation, and how long those shifts could linger. The family was left divided, the audience remained split, and the questions stayed open. And maybe that was the real outcome. Not a scandal, not an expose, but a reminder that in a world driven by image, tone, and reaction, the most powerful moments are often the ones where nothing is confirmed, yet everything feels changed. And now it all comes back to you. After everything that's been said, replayed, analyzed, and argued over, the biggest question is still hanging in the air. Did this conversation actually change anything? Or did it simply expose how ready people were for something to change? Fans are shocked, not because of a single moment, but because so many people felt the same reaction at the same time. Emotions ran high, lines were drawn, and yet nothing was officially proven or denied. That tension is exactly why this story refuses to fade. Some viewers walked away feeling validated, others felt frustrated, and many are still undecided. The family was left divided, not by facts, but by interpretation. And that's what makes this moment so powerful. It forces you to ask yourself what you trust more: tone or substance, image or outcome, silence or skepticism. There are no easy answers here, and maybe that's the point. Commentary like this doesn't tell you what to think. It dares you to notice how you feel. Now it's your turn to weigh in.
Did this sound like harmless conversation blown out of proportion? Or did it feel like something deeper was being acknowledged without being said out loud? Do you think moments like these reveal cracks in carefully managed images? Or are they just proof that the internet thrives on drama? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective is part of this story now. If you want more breakdowns like this, where we unpack the reactions, the narratives, and the moments everyone's arguing about, make sure you hit like and subscribe. It tells the algorithm you want more commentary like this, and it helps this channel grow more than you might realize. Share this video with someone who sees this differently than you do, and see what kind of debate it sparks. And don't forget to turn on notifications, because stories like this don't end cleanly. They evolve, they resurface, and they always come back when you least expect them.